I'm Michael Santos, and I'm the founder of Prison Professors. And one of the things that we're always trying to do is help justice-impacted people get the best possible outcome. And I'm always super enthusiastic when I get to learn from somebody who's kind of going through that journey, but I always have to be respectful of their identities and their stages of the journey. But when I get to talk to a woman, it's even more appealing because I know how few resources exist for women who are going through this system. And today, just kind of serendipitously, I'm going to have a conversation with a young woman who is facing some challenging times. And it all started with an email. Why don't you introduce yourself as you'd like to be introduced, known, and tell us about what prompted you to send me that email.
Hi, my name is Lori. I'm from Cincinnati.
But you're not really named Lori, and you're not really from Cincinnati, is that right?
That is correct.
So tell me why you and I are having a conversation, because it really doesn't matter the name or the location. What does matter is that you are a young woman who's facing some challenges. Why are we on the phone today?
Well, I had been Googling and looking for content that was woman related regarding the federal prison process.
And what stage of the process are you in right now?
I am pre-plea agreement.
So what is the plea agreement looking like to you right now?
It's looking painful and scary.
If there's a plea agreement, there's probably a number attached to it. What is that number?
It's about 14 years.
It's about 14 years. And what level of experience do you have in the criminal justice system right now?
I spent 5 days in holding. That is it.
So
I don't get more than a speeding ticket every 3 to 5 years.
So you've never been in trouble before with the law or facing the types of challenges that could result in the loss of your liberty. Is that right?
That is correct.
And let me ask you something. If I would have spoken with you 5 years ago and told you, hey, there's a possibility you're going to be going to prison, what would you have told me 5 years ago?
Absolutely no way possible.
No way possible.
Absolutely.
Sadly, that's the mindset of a lot of people who go into the system. They just don't know what's coming, and they don't realize how important their decisions are at every stage in the journey. And I know that you may be facing a sentence that could, as you said, could be 14 years, Lori from Cincinnati, but the reality is you're really important in what that sentence is going to be. Has anybody kind of prepped you for steps that you can take to influence that process?
No, everything that I've learned from listening to your podcasts, learned about the First Step Act from one of your podcasts. So in one of my meetings with my attorney, she mentioned the First Step Act, and I was familiar with it. So you've given me some education, and then it has also helped me work with my lawyer to have my best outcome possible.
So I want you to be thinking now about some really important stages, okay? And this all really starts with an attitude and a mindset, right? You've got to have this mindset that says, I have made some decisions in my life that have led to great outcomes, and I've made some decisions in my life that have exposed me to problems, okay? And when you made decisions that had great outcomes, they were probably deliberate and intentional. And when you had problems, when you made decisions that led to difficult outcomes, like what you're going through right now, they may have been more impulsive without really understanding the full ramifications of what's going on, right?
Yes.
So right now I want to be deliberate, and I want you to be intentional. And I want you to understand there's nothing we can do to change the past, but there are definitely things that you can do today to influence the future. But you've got to be intentional and deliberate, okay? So that's like the first step in like understanding the system. Wait a minute, I'm here. I can't change what happened last month, last year, 2 years ago, but maybe I can sow some seeds that will influence opportunities that open later. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
And if you don't know what those opportunities are, then you're probably less likely to be able to influence that. And so that's why I really try to invest as much time as I can, particularly to people in the stage that you're in right now. Do you know about my background?
I do. So, I told you I Google everything.
so I was in your stage once, and I did not have a conversation like this, and I made a series of really catastrophic decisions, or decisions that led to catastrophic consequences of a 45-year prison term. And I could have done things differently, but I didn't. And I want you to be thinking about what you can do differently. And if there's somebody watching this program, I want them to be thinking about what could I do intentionally. And that's really understanding this whole mitigation arc strategy that I write a lot about and publish on Prison Professors. It says, there's an important stage, which is before the judge, the prosecutor brings a case against you. If you could influence that, maybe a person could influence a statutory cap, okay? So that maybe the prosecutor charges you with something that has a maximum possible sentence of 5 years. That would be great, okay? But we didn't talk before then, and we didn't get an opportunity to have that. So now you've got a charge that you're looking at that it has a much higher statutory cap. And it also has sentencing guidelines associated with it. Those guidelines, however, are just guidelines. They are not mandatory. There may be a mandatory minimum sentence. There may not be. I don't know. But even if there's mandatory minimum sentences, there are off-ramps, and there are things that people can do. And if you understand those things, you're going to try and solve for those things. But if you don't know anything and you just look at those numbers, it can be terrifying. It can be terrifying. And I want to empower you to make better decisions, but you have to know what's coming. So what's coming is when you have a plea agreement, do you know the process that's coming? And if you do, could you tell me?
Yeah, so we received our plea agreements. I actually have a call with my lawyer today, but we talked with my husband's lawyer last week, and we were told basically that is the best plea agreement that we are going to receive.
And generally that's the case, just so you know, right? When they give you, it progressively gets worse, okay? It progressively gets worse. So, but let's continue. Do you know what happens after, if you choose to accept this plea agreement, what is going to happen? Do you have an understanding, and could you tell me if you do?
So we currently have a court date on calendar, but that is 2 months away. What I understand is that we will get a earlier court date on the calendar, enter our plea agreement, then we will meet with probation for our pre-sentence investigation or report, work on that, and then that will be presented to the judge, and then we'll have a sentencing date and a self-surrender date following that.
So may I ask what level of knowledge you have regarding that pre-sentence investigation report and its influence on your life, and then that sentencing hearing? Do you have an understanding of those two concepts?
So for the pre-sentencing report, what I learned from you, from listening to your podcasts. I've been absorbing as much content as I can to prepare. I went online, I downloaded a form that was actually used in another state, but it was just very generic of, your name, your address, your education, your family members, your children, etc. I pre-filled that out, and my thought is that if we don't have to sit there and talk about what address did you live at 20 years ago, and I'm trying to remember, we could actually move on to positive things like I donate blood and I do this charity drive every year, or whatever the case may be. So I pre-completed that form. Of course, my lawyer will review it and go over it with me and everything. I know it's not a final draft or anything, but I just wanted to get those basic questions out of the way. And so I was just told that I will sit with a probation officer, and they will ask me lots and lots and lots of questions about myself and my life.
So do you remember when we started this interview, I spoke about the importance of being intentional and deliberate? And
correct.
That when you had good things happen in your life, you were intentional and deliberate, correct?
Correct.
So I want you to go into that pre-sentence investigation meeting full of intent and deliberateness. I want you to know exactly what's happening. So we're going to talk about that a little bit in this interview, and then we're going to talk about how does that influence you later. Do you understand the influence of that pre-sentence investigation report as you move forward through the process? Because you said you understood that there's a sentencing hearing coming up after that. Do you understand the relationship between that pre-sentence investigation report and that sentencing hearing?
I believe I do. Everything that I've read and listened to, basically that report follows you through even into prison. And from what I read is your case manager will have access to it, the guards will have access to it, the warden will have access to it, and that helps define your level of care and level of treatment, what you're capable of, what you're not capable of.
Okay. And so what level of importance do you place on that report and influencing both your sentencing hearing and administrative processes that may be available to you later, so that you could advocate for yourself for potentially a higher level of liberty later?
I believe that it has a lot of impact on it. It seems like it's the one document that will define my time in prison. It's
one document, because the pre-sentence investigation report is like a historical look on your life. How did you get here? What changed in your life that led you to transition from being a law-abiding, tax-paying citizen who never thought they would ever see a pair of handcuffs, to being somebody who is now faced with trauma and the crisis of a lengthy prison term? And I want you to think about that, and how do you frame that into a story to help us make that connection. And so I'm going to ask you some questions about that. So that's one very important document. But another very important document is going to be your release plan. And what are you doing to make people that you don't know and that don't know you, that will never see you, they'll never meet you, they're just going to look at these documents and make an assessment on whether you are worthy of consideration for a higher level of liberty. And you'll never meet them. You'll never get an opportunity to make the case in front of them. But the documents you prepare and the timing in which you prepare them can have a huge influence on you. Have you seen the interviews that I've done with federal judges?
No.
So it's going to be important, I think, for you to do some homework and watch those videos. And one of the things that you will hear from those judges is that I know what the prosecutor is going to say. Okay? I'm a federal judge. Prosecutor has a job. What's that prosecutor's job?
To put criminals in prison.
Okay? And so that prosecutor is going to use everything he can to build a case that shows why a criminal should go to prison, right? Right? That's their job. Okay? But they've got it's not really an even playing field, because this is something they do every day. And so they know how to stack the deck and make things look, very serious, to focus on the crime. Okay? Now the judge also says he knows everything your defense attorney is going to say. What's your defense attorney going to say?
Leniency?
Yeah. Doesn't matter what you did, doesn't matter your background, that defense attorney is going to ask for leniency. That's his job or her job, right? Judge knows that. There's going to be no surprises there. What is the one thing the judge doesn't know?
Me.
Exactly. And that's why you are the most important person in this entire proceeding. And you have to be very deliberate about what that judge is going to know about you. And you've got to know how to present it and how it's going to influence the judge. So, what's the one thing that every single person in your situation wants when they go before sentencing?
The least possible sentence.
Whoa, bingo, right? So what's going to be different with you than everybody else? And the more you think about that, the more intentional you can be in building this mitigation strategy. So I'm the judge, okay? Let's just role play a little bit here. I'm the judge. Why are you worthy of relief? Why should I have mercy on you? Everybody here wants mercy. Prosecutor wants me to give you a long time because the prosecutor says, if I'm merciful on you, I might be being kind to the criminal, but I'm hurting the victims of the crime. Okay? That's going to be a prosecutorial argument. You need to put that in your head and think about that, right? It's not personal to the prosecutor. That's the prosecutor's job. Okay? Success for the prosecutor comes when he protects society or she protects society. That's how they're going to think. Okay? And nobody's going to do you any favors by telling you something different. So understand that. Second, if every person that goes before that place, I'm the judge. That's right, I'm the judge. So the judge all goes in, and I know what your defense lawyer says. He says that you should be a candidate for sainthood, and we should give you probation and maybe a $200 bonus for pass and go. And I'm in charge with the responsibility of making a decision of what's justice. So why shouldn't I put you in prison for 14 years?
So we started to have this conversation earlier, and I said, because I'm a good person.
Okay.
And I give blood, and I raise money for Alzheimer's awareness, and I get donations and take them to children's homes, and I'm currently working a 12-step program. And I guess that wasn't quite the full answer, so
well, no, that was the full answer.
Go.
That's the answer that somebody gives when they don't have a deliberate, intentional plan. But I want you to be different. I want you to remember you need to start by thinking about the prosecutor, and you need to start thinking about the judge today. Who are they? How did they get to that position? What motivates them? What do they hear every day? What is different in your answer from everybody else's? Now, I'm the prosecutor. I just heard what you said. Your Honor, Lori from Cincinnati. Lori from Cincinnati is saying that she wants a lower sentence, but she didn't think about that before she committed the crime, Your Honor. And we need to punish the crime here. And it's all about her. That's all we're hearing about is her. She's talking about herself, and she just doesn't fully appreciate the magnitude of errors that she has caused on our country. And she is probably the cause for everything wrong in society. And that's just life, right? You got to think about this. This is what's coming. What are you going to say or do to offset that? And the more we think about that, the more we can craft a message. And I want you to be able to craft a message. And I don't help you or anybody else by just beating you up on that. So I want to try a different approach of giving you some ideas, because we're going to put this up on video. You'll be able to watch it in Cincinnati or wherever you are. And the ladies in prison that are watching this can also think about this. So would you like to hear maybe a different set of answers? Then
yes, of course.
I give blood, and I did this, and I'm going to miss my kids, and I found Jesus, and those are all possibilities, right? Everybody can say that, but you've got to be different, and I want you to be different. So and I don't know anything about your crime at all, but I know from just asking you a few simple questions that you view yourself as a law-abiding, tax-paying citizen. That's how you see yourself. You see yourself as somebody who's never been in trouble before and shouldn't be going to prison, and you see no benefit in putting you in prison. Okay? Prosecutor has a different view. The judge, who probably used to be a prosecutor, has a different point of view, okay? And what the prosecutor rarely hears is somebody who is truly introspected and thought about how they got here and what they've learned from this experience and what the victims are. And now let me ask you a question. Who are the victims in your case? See, you can't have that deer in the headlights look. This is a very important question. Deliberate. We are going to be very intentional about this. And I don't know the case at all. I don't even know what kind of case it is, but I was a drug offender, so I'm going to use drugs as an example. If I could have done it differently, and if I were Lori from Cincinnati, this is probably what I would try to build a story around. Your Honor, I stand before you humiliated and embarrassed for the harm that I have caused to so many people. I don't even know how I got here, but since finding myself in the cages of a federal prison detention center, and I've had time to think. I had time to think about all the influences that really led my life down this path. And previously, I didn't even recognize the bad decisions that I had made. But while sitting inside of that jail cell, I realized that it's not all about me. It's about what I did and what I'm going to have to do to make things right. And so the first thing I want to say, Your Honor, is I want to express remorse for the crime that I committed. Because as an American citizen, I know I don't have the right to break any laws. And so after I got out of that detention center and I got to go back home, I started to think about working with my attorney and figuring out, hey, how do I work toward making things right? And I knew that I couldn't live in that delusion anymore of believing I didn't do anything wrong. And it didn't matter that I spent my life trying to be a good person. What mattered in this particular instance is that I committed a crime, and a crime brings victims. And because there are victims, I have to work to make things better. And so some of the things that I did when I was going through this process, I tried to figure out, what's the purpose of the criminal justice system? What is it? And so I spent time right on the court's website, and I saw that there are really 4 principles there. One of them is a person, the criminal justice system in imposing sentencing is supposed to punish people who break the law. And another goal of the criminal justice system I read is it's supposed to incapacitate people so they don't break the law while they're serving the sentence. And that's why they lock them in prison, I learned. And the third is it's supposed to deter other people from breaking the law. That's what one of the third goals of a sentence is. And the fourth is it's supposed to rehabilitate people and make things right. And the more I thought about that, Your Honor, the more I realized I can't do anything about what is the appropriate punishment or what the appropriate deterrence is or what the appropriate method of incapacitation. That's all for people a lot smarter than me and have a lot more power than me. When I thought about rehabilitation, I knew that's really about me. That's something that I choose. I have to try to make things right. And it led me to start thinking about what's my role as an American citizen. You know, I have the duty in a democracy like ours to abide by the law. If I don't like the law, I can work to change the law. I can't break the law. But I did in this case, and I'm just humiliated and heartbroken because I know this isn't the legacy I want to leave. I've got an adult child that I love and should be setting a role model for him, and I didn't. I failed. I failed my husband. I failed my community. I failed my career, and this isn't really who I am. And so I'd like to take you some time, Your Honor, to make sure that you understand who I am and how I got here and what values I try to live by, because this is an aberration in my life. This is something I did out of the blue. It was impulsive and it was wrong, and I regret it. And I'm going to spend, but this is what I have been doing since, in order to try and make amends. I started by just trying to follow that model that I learned from Alcoholics Anonymous. I think it says it's really hard. The first thing to do is to say, my name is Lisa and I am an alcoholic. I mean, that takes people months. It took me a while to figure out, geez, I really did something wrong. It was out of this recklessness of desperation and arrogance that I thought I could break the law without consequence. And I know I did. And I regret it, and I could go on for days doing that kind of stuff because but you're getting the message. It's always about, I recognize there is a victim. If I look at you, you don't know who the victim is, right? But the judge thinks there's a victim, okay? And my PSR, it says there is no victim. It's a victimless crime. It was consenting adults, right? But that's not how the system is ever going to see it. Right? The system is going to see the law exists, you broke the law, that makes every American citizen a victim. And if you can somehow articulate you understand that, that moves the needle a little bit over in your favor, because it takes away the prosecutor's argument that you're only sorry because you got caught. You have to say, I didn't only plead guilty, I did something about it. I learned more about this. I learned more about what I could do better. And from a judge's perspective and from the system's perspective, that kind of introspection means that you're less likely to do it again. You've really thought about it, because most people, the only thing they want to say, I'm a good person. I shouldn't be going to prison. I'm going to miss my kids. It's going to serve society no good. That's like the worst argument you can say. Please focus on helping the judge understand who you are, helping the judge understand that you identify with the victims of the crime, helping the judge understand that you are trying to make amends and reconcile, and that's going to put you in a different light from others. And if you can do that, you're going to be in a better position. And now, I know I gave you a lot, but that's cool because we recorded it and you can watch it over and over again. But I do hope that makes sense to you. And if it doesn't, I'm happy to respond to any questions you have.
I think one of the questions I have is regarding sentencing.
Okay.
What I learned is that according to my plea agreement, the sentencing is solely up to the judge.
That's correct. And the prosecutor can ask for a given time, but you can influence that judge. And that's what I'm trying to help you do right now. Understand how you can influence that judge.
And the judge's ruling or sentencing, is it immediate or is it at a future date?
It's going to be right there.
Really?
Mm-hmm. You're going to stand there. You're going to start preparing, I hope, before you do that pre-sentence investigation. I hope that you will write. What's your educational background?
Just a high school graduate.
So you have to figure out if you are the right person to write this personal first-person story of your life. Okay? And if you're not, you need to find somebody who can, okay, that can write this story for your life. Because it's more important than anything your lawyer's going to write. The lawyer's going to write a bunch of legal things and, Title 18, 28, whatever, all this kind of stuff. But the judge knows all that. The judge doesn't know you. And the judge needs to know you. So there'll be
a pre-sentence investigation report.
If you write it before that pre-sentence investigation interview, you can give it to the probation officer and have it woven into the report.
Okay.
And you will listen, if you listen to the interviews that I did with federal judges, and it's available on our website at Prison Professors, you can watch those interviews, and the judges both said they would be very impressed if somebody had done that before the pre-sentence investigation interview. Okay? Don't take my words for it. I want you to listen to the judge, okay? And I want you to think about how am I going to do what the judge is telling me to do, because the judge said that would be very influential to me if I saw that, okay?
So, just real quick, so if I wrote my personal narrative, can that be given to the judge, or is that just woven into the pre-sentence?
It will be both. Ideally, if you're successful, the probation officer is going to put the whole thing right in the pre-sentence investigation report, and the judge will see it.
Okay.
And you should tell the probation officer when you're going there, you should say, I knew I was going to be nervous here. I did my best to prepare. I knew I was going to write a letter to the judge, and this is the letter that I wrote for the judge, and I just thought it would help you understand me a little bit more, and to the extent that you feel comfortable, I'd appreciate it if you put that into the report so it follows me along through prison, and so my judge sees it.
Okay, perfect.
And the probation officer may do that, may take snippets of it, but it will become a part of your permanent record. And then you could use that in the months ahead or years ahead when you are trying to advocate for yourself. I would like you to be able to say, I started preparing even before I got sentenced. And that's a powerful story. So you've got to be thinking about these people you're going to meet in the future. And that, if you can make that into your permanent record, you're stronger. Okay?
Okay.
You had other questions for me?
No, I think that was just really my main question.
So like that's a one-part approach. Get it ready before the pre-sentence investigation report, have it sent to sentencing, but also work on your elocution, which is what I just kind of did. I said all that stuff that I want you to learn how to say to the best of your ability when you stand at that sentencing hearing and the judge asks you, what do you have to say?
And I will have that opportunity no matter what?
Yeah, so let me tell you what happens at a sentencing hearing. Okay? First of all, after that pre-sentence investigation gets completed, you're going to get a copy of it and your prosecutor is going to get a copy of it. Each of you may agree with it, each of you may disagree with it, and if you do, you're going to try and work out those differences before sentencing. Then it's going to come the sentencing date. The first thing the judge is going to do is say, let's work through this PSR. Let's find out. I'm going to make a ruling. Prosecutor has a position, defense attorney has a position, judge is going to listen to both positions, and then the judge is going to make a decision, and then that becomes factual. It's a fact once the judge says so. You're going to a trier of fact. So the judge will say, this is what I rule, boom, now it's a fact, and points will be associated with his decision. Okay?
I honestly thought that they just got paperwork and then wrote their ruling and I never went to court or anything.
You're going to court for a sentencing hearing. You're going to stand in that court. It's going to last anywhere from an hour to 3 or 4 hours, depending on how many things are in that, how many discrepancies are in that pre-sentence investigation report. But at the end, the prosecutor is going to make a statement with a recommendation of sentencing. Your defense attorney is going to make a statement with a recommendation for sentencing, and the judge is going to say, does the defendant have anything to say? Because you don't have to say anything, but you have a constitutional right to stand up and say something. And if you're expressing remorse and doing the things that you hear on our podcast and on our websites, I would highly recommend you make a case, because you are going to be, you're about to make the biggest sale in your life. And you need to be intentional and deliberate about it. And the more work you do on it, the better off you're going to be.
And I know it's probably better to memorize and have what I want to say ready. Notes, bullet points, okay?
Everything is okay. I prefer to do it as I just try to do it for you, just looking at the judge's eye and having it come from your heart. But you're going to hear the judges that I interviewed. They'll say it's appropriate if a defendant is crying, if a defendant is not crying. It's appropriate if a defendant reads, if a defendant doesn't read. I want to listen and see how much work the defendant is doing to show me they have learned from this experience. They identify with the victims. They are worthy of mercy. So you've got to build that case. And it's not about you. It's about how much you've thought about this and what you're doing to make things better. And I highly recommend you spend a lot of time learning and reading. Somebody's going to have to do the work. It's either going to be you or it's going to be not done. Your attorney can't do this kind of work for you. You have to do it. Or you have to find somebody that's going to help you do this kind of work.
And is it about a 5-minute
oration?
Yeah.
Could be. I think that's an appropriate time. 5 minutes is good.
Okay.
The writing,
it shouldn't be like 30 minutes, right?
I think 5 minutes is sufficient. And I think that your writing should be somewhere between 2,500 and 3,500 words of writing your story.
Okay.
Okay? So you'll see a lot of examples of that on our website, and I hope that you'll use them. They're all free, but you've got to do the work, and that's a lot of work. Okay. I hope this is helpful to you.
It's very helpful.
Good. So you'll have a copy of this video, and you can listen to it on iTunes. And if you're watching this inside of a jail or a prison, I hope that you are like Lori from Cincinnati and doing everything you can to work toward the best possible outcome. Thanks. And if you're watching this on YouTube or iTunes, make sure you subscribe to Prison Professors. I always forget to say that. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.